Captain Jake Morrison stood at the main observation deck of Kepler Station and watched the twin suns of the Proxima system rise over the horizon of the small moon they called home. The station was not much to look at from the outside, just a collection of metal domes and connecting tunnels built into the rocky surface, but it represented something important to humanity. It was their furthest outpost in this section of the galaxy, a beacon of human presence in the vast darkness of space. Jake had been commanding the station for almost 3 years now. When he first arrived, it was just a basic research facility with maybe 50 people. Now it housed 347 souls, including scientists, engineers, security personnel, and even a few families who had made this remote place their home. The station had grown into something special, a real community at the edge of known space. Dr. Lisa Carter walked up beside him, carrying her morning coffee in one of those magnetic cups that kept the liquid from floating away in the lower gravity sections. She was the chief xenobiologist for the station, responsible for studying all the strange and wonderful life forms they discovered on nearby worlds. Lisa had been one of the first people to volunteer for this assignment, and Jake respected her dedication to the work. "Beautiful morning," Lisa said. Though morning and night did not mean much when you lived on a space station, they kept Earth time here, which helped people maintain some sense of normal routine. "Always is out here," Jake replied. "Any word from the survey team on Proxima 3? They should be back tomorrow. Early reports suggest they found some interesting mineral formations that might indicate past water activity. Nothing too exciting, but Dr. Chen wants to take a closer look." Commander Ryan Bell appeared in the doorway behind them. Ryan was head of security for the station, a former military man who took his job very seriously. He was the kind of person who always seemed to be thinking about potential threats and how to deal with them. Jake appreciated having someone like Ryan around, especially this far from any backup. "Captain, we just received a priority message from the diplomatic corps on Earth," Ryan said. "Ambassador Kyle Davis is requesting a secure channel conference in 1 hour. Jake nodded. Kyle was their main contact with the various alien species they had encountered in this region. Most of the first contact situations had gone smoothly. The humans had met 4 different species so far, and 3 of them had been friendly enough. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation, all the good things that happened when civilized beings met each other in space. The 4th species was different. The Velth Dominion had made contact about 6 months ago, and every interaction since then had been tense. They were an insectoid race that seemed to view everything in terms of territory and dominance. Their ships were larger and more advanced than anything humanity had built, and their attitude suggested they were used to getting their way. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan made their way to the communication center. The room was filled with screens and complex equipment that allowed them to talk with Earth across the vast distances of space. It took about 20 minutes for signals to travel each way, which made real conversations impossible, but they could still exchange information. Ambassador Davis appeared on the main screen exactly 1 hour later. He looked tired, which was never a good sign. Kyle was usually very composed and professional, but today he seemed worried about something. "Captain Morrison, I have some concerning news about our situation with the Velth Dominion. Our diplomatic team has been trying to negotiate a formal treaty with them for the past month, but they have become increasingly hostile. They claim that your station and several human colonies are located in what they consider to be sovereign Velth territory." Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They had been very careful to establish Kepler Station in what all the star charts showed as unclaimed space. The Velth had never mentioned any territorial claims in this area during their previous communications. They are demanding that all human presence in this sector be removed within 30 days. They refuse to recognize any human claims to colonization rights, and they have rejected all our proposals for shared territory or joint development projects. I am afraid they view our expansion as a direct threat to their empire. Lisa stepped forward. "Ambassador, what do we know about their military capabilities? Have there been any actual threats made?" Kyle's expression became even more grim. "Dr. Carter, we have been investigating reports from other species in the region. The Velth have a history of dealing with territorial disputes through complete military destruction of their opponents. 3 different civilizations have simply disappeared from star systems that the Velth later claimed. No survivors, no refugees, no trace that they ever existed." Ryan crossed his arms. "How much time do we have before they take action?" "Unknown. They have been building up their fleet strength in nearby systems for the past 2 weeks. Our long-range sensors have detected at least 12 major warships moving toward this region. Captain Morrison, I must advise you to begin evacuation procedures immediately. Jake thought about the 347 people under his command. Many of them had invested years of their lives in making the station work. They had built something important here, a foothold for humanity in this part of the galaxy. The idea of just abandoning it because some alien empire decided they wanted the space felt wrong. Ambassador, what about backup from Earth? Can we get military support? The nearest Earth defense fleet is 3 weeks away at best. Even if we sent them immediately, they would not arrive in time to help if the Velth decide to attack. After the communication ended, Jake called a meeting with his senior staff. Dr. Carter represented the civilian scientists, Ryan spoke for security, and Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez handled all the technical systems that kept the station running. They gathered in the main conference room to discuss their options. We could evacuate everyone, Ryan said. Get them on the transport ships and send them back toward Earth space. It would take multiple trips, but we could probably get most people out safely. Carlos shook his head. The transport ships can only carry about 80 people each, and we only have 3 of them operational right now. It would take weeks to evacuate everyone, and that assumes the ships can make it past any Velth patrols. Lisa had been studying the data about Velth military actions in other systems. Looking at what happened to those other civilizations, I do not think evacuation will be enough. The Velth seem to view any human presence in this region as unacceptable. Even if we abandon the station, they might hunt down our ships. Jake made his decision. We start evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel immediately. Families, civilian researchers, anyone who is not critical to station operations. But we are not abandoning Kepler Station without a fight. This is human territory, legally claimed and properly settled. We have done nothing wrong. The next few days were busy and stressful. Transport ships began carrying people back towards safer human space. Many of the departing colonists were angry about being forced to leave their homes. Others were frightened by the reports of what the Velth had done to other species. Dr. Carter worked around the clock to compile all their research data and send it back to Earth. If something happened to the station, at least the scientific knowledge they had gathered would survive. She also prepared detailed reports about Velth technology and military tactics based on their observations. Then the Velth arrived. Long-range sensors detected their fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 12 massive ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with purpose and precision toward Kepler Station. The Velth fleet approached Kepler Station like a pack of predators closing in on wounded prey. Captain Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as 12 massive alien warships moved into attack formation around his small outpost. Each Velth vessel was at least 3 times larger than the biggest human ship he had ever seen, their dark hulls bristling with weapon systems that could probably destroy the station with a single coordinated strike. War Prime Zekthar's voice came through the communication system with a harsh, clicking accent that made every word sound like a threat. Human settlement, you have violated sovereign Velth territory. You will surrender your station and all personnel for judgment, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 standard hour to comply. Jake looked around the command center at his remaining crew. They had managed to evacuate about half the station's population over the past week, but there were still 173 people aboard Kepler Station. Dr. Lisa Carter was among those who had refused to leave, insisting that her research was too important to abandon. Commander Ryan Bell had volunteered to stay and coordinate the station's defense systems, even though everyone knew they were hopelessly outgunned. This is Captain Morrison of Kepler Station. We are a peaceful research facility, operating in legally claimed human territory under galactic colonization law. We have committed no crimes and pose no threat to your empire. We request safe passage for our civilian personnel. The response came back immediately. Human Captain, there is no legal claim that supersedes Velth dominion. Your species trespasses on ancient Velth territory. Surrender now or face annihilation. Ryan pulled Jake aside and spoke in a low voice. Captain, our defensive weapons are mining lasers and basic point defense systems. We might be able to damage one of their smaller ships, but against 12 dreadnoughts we would not last 5 minutes in open combat. Dr. Carter was working frantically at her computer station, trying to upload all their research data to the communication array, so it could be transmitted to Earth before the inevitable attack. Jake, I am reading massive energy signatures from their weapon systems. These ships have enough firepower to crack a small moon. Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez was checking the status of their remaining transport ships. Captain, we have 2 transports ready to launch, but they can only carry about 60 people each. The 3rd transport has engine problems and will need at least 12 hours to repair. Jake made the hardest decision of his life. Load the transports with essential personnel and civilians. Get them launched immediately and tell them to run for the hyperspace jump point. Maybe they can get away before the Velth can intercept them. The 2 transporting ships launched from Kepler Station's docking bay and accelerated toward the edge of the star system, where they could safely jump to hyperspace. Jake watched them on the long-range sensors and allowed himself to hope that at least some of his people might escape this disaster. Then the Velth opened fire without warning. The first transport ship, carrying 89 people including most of the station's families and children, simply vanished in a brilliant flash of energy. The Velth weapons hit it with such overwhelming force that there was not even debris left behind. Just empty space where moments before there had been a ship full of innocent people trying to flee to safety. The second transport lasted a few seconds longer before 3 Velth ships focused their fire on it. Lieutenant Amy Johnson was piloting that ship, and her last transmission was a defiant message telling the aliens exactly what she thought of their honor and their empire before the weapons fire consumed her vessel. Jake stared at the tactical display in shock and horror. The Velth had not even waited for their ultimatum to expire. They had simply murdered 162 human beings in cold blood, including children who had never harmed anyone in their short lives. All stations, battle alert, Jake announced over the station's communication system. This is not a drill. Prepare for incoming attack. The Velth fleet moved closer to Kepler Station, taking their time now that they had eliminated the fleeing transports. War Prime Zekthar's voice came over the communication channel again, and this time Jake could hear something like satisfaction in the alien's harsh tones. Human Captain, your vessels attempted to flee our justice. They have been punished for this transgression. Surrender your station immediately or you will share their fate. Jake's response was short and filled with rage. Go to hell. The Velth attack on Kepler Station began with surgical precision. They did not simply blast the outpost to pieces like they had done with the transport ships. Instead, they systematically destroyed specific sections while leaving others intact, clearly planning to board the station and capture any survivors. Ryan coordinated the defense from the security center, directing the station's limited weapons to target the nearest Velth ship. The mining lasers and missile systems managed to damage the alien vessel's shields, but it was like throwing rocks at a battleship. The Velth returned fire and vaporized the entire weapons section of the station. Dr. Carter managed to complete the data transmission to Earth just before the communication array was destroyed. Her last message included detailed scans of Velth ship designs and weapon capabilities, information that might help humanity prepare for future encounters with this vicious alien empire. Chief Engineer Martinez died trying to maintain power to the station's life support systems. A Velth plasma bolt punched through the reactor shielding and flooded the engineering section with lethal radiation. Carlos stayed at his post long enough to route backup, powered to the emergency shelters, before the radiation killed him. Lieutenant Tony Wright led a desperate fighting retreat as Velth boarding. Parties cut through the station's outer hull. The aliens wore powered armor that made them nearly invulnerable to human small arms, and their own weapons could punch through bulkheads like they were made of paper. Tony and his security team held the main corridor for almost an hour before they were overwhelmed and slaughtered. Jake found himself trapped in the command center with Dr. Carter and 7 other survivors, as Velth warriors methodically cleared the rest of the station. They could hear the sounds of weapon fire and screaming echoing through the corridors as their friends and colleagues were hunted down and executed. Captain, we need to get to the emergency shelter, Lisa said. It has independent life support and heavier armor plating. We might be able to survive long enough for help to arrive. They made a desperate run through the damaged corridors of Kepler Station, stepping over the bodies of people they had worked with for years. The emergency shelter was located at the center of the outpost, protected by multiple layers of armor and defensive systems designed to keep people alive, even if the rest of the station was destroyed. 17 people made it to the emergency shelter before the Velth sealed the entrances and began systematically hunting down anyone who remained outside. Jake, Lisa, Ryan, and 14 others huddled in the cramped space and listened to the sounds of their home being torn apart around them. The Velth took their time with the final phase of their attack. They dragged wounded survivors into the main corridor and executed them one by one while broadcasting the killings on all communication frequencies. War Prime Zekthar wanted to make sure that anyone listening would understand exactly what happened to those who opposed the Velth Dominion. "Let this be a lesson to all humans," Zekthar announced. "Your species is weak and your technology is primitive. You have no place in this region of space. Withdraw from all Velth territory or suffer the same fate as this pathetic outpost." The alien commander ordered his ships to bombard the station's outer sections, reducing most of Kepler Station to twisted metal and debris. Only the central core remained intact, containing the emergency shelter where Jake and his survivors waited in the darkness, listening to the sounds of their friends being murdered and their life's work being destroyed. The distress signal from Kepler Station traveled through space for 3 weeks before it reached Earth. The message contained Dr. Lisa Carter's final data transmission, along with automated recordings from the station's external sensors that had captured the entire massacre. When the signal arrived at Luna Base, the communications officer who received it immediately contacted Admiral Patricia Stone, head of the Solar Defense Fleet. Admiral Stone was reviewing routine patrol reports in her office when the priority alert came through. She was a veteran commander who had spent 30 years protecting humanity's colonies and trade routes, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for what she saw in the Kepler Station recordings. The cold-blooded destruction of the transport ships, the systematic execution of wounded survivors, the complete annihilation of a peaceful research outpost filled with families and children. Within 2 hours, every major leader in the human government was gathered in the emergency session chamber deep beneath Geneva. President Marcus Webb sat at the head of the table, his face pale as he watched the recordings for the 3rd time. The images of children's bodies floating in the debris field around Kepler Station had shaken him to his core. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at the complete destruction of one of our frontier outposts and the murder of 330 souls," President Webb said. "The aliens responsible have made it clear that they consider any human presence in their territory to be grounds for extermination. This is not a border dispute or a diplomatic misunderstanding. This is genocide." Director Helen Gray from the Advanced Weapons Division had brought classified files that she now spread across the conference table. For decades, humanity had been developing theoretical weapon systems that were considered too dangerous for actual deployment. The philosophy had always been that diplomatic solutions and conventional military force would be sufficient to handle any threats humanity might face in space. "Mr. President, we have weapons that could respond to this threat, but they represent a significant escalation in destructive capability," Director Gray said. "These are not defensive systems. These are weapons designed to completely eliminate hostile civilizations." General Pete Collins, commander of Earth's ground forces, studied the tactical analysis of Velth military capabilities that Dr. Carter had transmitted before her death. "The Velth have superior technology and a massive fleet advantage. A conventional military response would likely result in the same fate that befell Kepler Station. We need something that will level the playing field." Admiral Stone had been quietly reviewing star charts and fleet deployment schedules. "We can assemble the largest battle fleet in human history within 48 hours. Every major warship, every experienced crew, every advanced weapon system we have ever built. But even that might not be enough against 12 dreadnoughts, and intelligence suggests the Velth have many more ships in their territory." Dr. Nathan Price, head of the Theoretical Physics Department, had been working on humanity's most classified weapons projects for over a decade. "Admiral, the Planet Cracker missiles are ready for deployment. We have been testing them in remote star systems for the past 5 years. They work exactly as designed." President Webb looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. "Are we really considering the complete destruction of an entire alien civilization? Is that what we have become?" The question hung in the air for several long moments before Admiral Stone spoke. "Mr. President, they murdered children. They broadcast the executions to make sure we understood that this was not war. It was extermination. They have done this to other species in the past, and they will do it again unless they are stopped. Director Gray activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports from the Kepler station region. Our analysis indicates that the Vyelth Dominion has systematically destroyed at least 6 other civilizations in the past century. Billions of sentient beings have been exterminated for the crime of existing in space that the Vyelth wanted to claim. This is not their first genocide, and it will not be their last unless we end their ability to commit these crimes. General Collins had been studying the personnel files from Kepler Station. 330 people, including 47 children. Dr. Sarah Kim, age 8. Bobby Martinez, age 6. Lisa Wong, age 12. They killed children, Mr. President. They killed them deliberately and broadcast the murders to terrorize us. President Webb made his decision. Admiral Stone, you have authorization to deploy the entire solar defense fleet. Director Gray, prepare your advanced weapons for immediate deployment. General Collins, ready your forces for support operations. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Vyelth Dominion. The next 48 hours saw the most massive military mobilization in human history. Ships that had been scattered across the solar system for routine patrols and training exercises converged on Luna base. The enormous shipyards around Jupiter worked around the clock to load the fleet with experimental weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. The centerpiece of the fleet was the USS Retribution, a kilometer-long dreadnought that had been completed just 6 months earlier. The ship carried 12 planet cracker missiles, each one capable of destroying an entire world. Captain Miranda Cole had been chosen to command the vessel, and she understood the terrible responsibility that came with such destructive power. Dr. Nathan Price supervised the loading of his theoretical weapons onto the fleet's ships. Gravity bombs that could collapse a star, antimatter torpedoes that could vaporize anything they touched, quantum disruptors that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. These were weapons that humanity had hoped never to use, but the Vyelth had made peaceful coexistence impossible. Admiral Stone's fleet consisted of 400 warships, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Every experienced captain and crew had volunteered for the mission. The mood throughout the fleet was grim determination mixed with righteous anger. They were not going to war for territory or resources. They were going to war to avenge the murder of innocents and to ensure that no other peaceful outpost would suffer the same fate as Kepler Station. The survivors from Kepler Station had been rescued by a fast scout ship that managed to reach the emergency shelter before the Vyelth could detect it. Captain Jake Morrison, Dr. Lisa Carter, Commander Ryan Bell, and 14 others were brought back to Earth to provide intelligence about Vyelth tactics and technology. They were physically and emotionally shattered by their ordeal, but their information would be crucial for the success of humanity's response. Jake Morrison met with Admiral Stone in her private office aboard the flagship. Admiral, they are not just warriors, they are monsters. They enjoyed killing our people. They took pleasure in broadcasting the executions. This is not a species that can be reasoned with or reformed. They understand only strength and they respect only those who can destroy them completely. Dr. Carter provided detailed analysis of Vyelth ship designs and weapon capabilities. Their technology is more advanced than ours in some areas, but they have weaknesses. Their ships are heavily armored but poorly shielded against certain types of energy weapons. Their tactics rely on overwhelming firepower rather than strategy or coordination. Admiral Stone studied the intelligence reports and began formulating her battle plan. The Vyelth expected humanity to respond with conventional military tactics and limited objectives. They thought humans would try to negotiate or seek a diplomatic solution even after the massacre at Kepler Station. They were wrong. Gentlemen, the Vyelth Dominion has existed for centuries by terrorizing and exterminating peaceful civilizations. They have grown complacent and overconfident. They expect their victims to cower and beg for mercy. Instead, we are going to show them what happens when they attack the wrong species. The human fleet departed from Luna base with enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Their mission was simple and absolute. Find the Vyelth homeworld and eliminate every trace of their civilization from the galaxy. There would be no prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy. The Vyelth had chosen genocide as their method of expansion, and humanity would respond by making them extinct. The human fleet moved through Vyelth territory like an unstoppable force of nature. Admiral Patricia Stone had divided her 400 ships into smaller battle groups that could strike multiple targets simultaneously, while gathering intelligence about the location and defenses of the Vyelth homeworld. Every Veilth military installation, every shipyard, every supply depot became a target for humanity's righteous fury. Captain Miranda Cole commanded the stealth destroyer USS Vengeance in the first wave of attacks against Veilth supply lines. Her ship was equipped with experimental cloaking technology that made it nearly invisible to alien sensors. She led her crew on hit-and-run attacks against Veilth cargo convoys, destroying supply ships carrying weapons and resources to their frontier bases. The Veilth had never faced an enemy capable of matching their technological superiority. For centuries, they had conquered primitive civilizations with overwhelming force, never needing to develop sophisticated tactics or defensive strategies. Their ships were powerful but predictable, their commanders arrogant and overconfident. Commander Steve Baker led Squadron 7 in devastating bombing runs against Veilth shipyards in the Chronos system. His pilots flew new fighter bombers equipped with antimatter torpedoes that could penetrate even the heaviest armor plating. The attack destroyed 3 major construction facilities before the Veilth could organize an effective response. As the human fleet advanced deeper into Veilth space, they discovered the true scope of the alien empire's crimes against other species. Entire star systems had been stripped of all life, with beautiful worlds reduced to barren rocks after the Veilth extracted every useful resource and eliminated every living thing that might compete with their expansion. Lieutenant Kate Murphy documented the genocide for the war crimes records that Earth was compiling. On the world of Xerion Prime, she found the remains of a peaceful trading civilization that had been completely exterminated just 2 years earlier. The Veilth had not simply conquered the planet, they had systematically destroyed every city, every monument, every trace that intelligent life had ever existed there. Dr. Ashley Davis, the fleet's xenoarchaeologist, investigated the ruins of what had once been a thriving interstellar confederation. The evidence showed that the Veilth had deliberately targeted schools, hospitals, and cultural centers during their invasion. They had not been interested in conquest or subjugation, only in complete extermination of any species that dared to exist in space they wanted to claim. The breaking point came when the human fleet reached the Xerion system and discovered what the Veilth called a cleansing operation. The aliens had recently finished eliminating a peaceful species called the Malorians, butterfly-like beings who had never developed military technology, because they had never encountered a hostile civilization before meeting the Veilth. Commander Ryan Bell, who had survived the massacre at Kepler Station, was part of the ground team that investigated the Malorian homeworld. What they found there made even hardened military veterans sick with rage. The Veilth had not simply killed the Malorians, they had tortured them for entertainment before the final extermination. Admiral Stone received the reports from Xerion and immediately authorized the deployment of humanity's most devastating weapons. The evidence was overwhelming that the Veilth Dominion represented an existential threat, not just to humanity, but to every peaceful species in the galaxy. There could be no negotiation with a civilization that practiced genocide as a matter of policy. War Prime Zekthar attempted to rally his scattered fleets for a counterattack against the advancing human forces. He had expected the humans to respond to the Kepler Station massacre with diplomatic protests and maybe limited military retaliation. Instead, he found himself facing an enemy that seemed determined to destroy his entire civilization. The Veilth commander tried to use the same tactics that had worked against other species in the past. He concentrated his remaining ships into a massive fleet and moved to engage the humans in direct battle, confident that superior numbers and firepower would carry the day. He had not yet understood that humanity had developed weapons specifically designed to fight enemies with technological advantages. Captain Jake Morrison had requested permission to join the fleet as an observer aboard the USS Retribution. Admiral Stone had agreed, believing that the survivors of Kepler Station deserved to witness the justice that was coming for their murdered friends and colleagues. Jake stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought and watched as human forces systematically dismantled the Veilth war machine. The first major fleet engagement took place at the edge of the Veilth home system. Zekthar brought 60 of his best warships to stop the human advance, deploying them in a traditional battle formation that had served the Veilth well against less advanced opponents. Admiral Stone responded by unleashing weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Gravity bombs collapsed 3 Veilth dreadnoughts by creating localized black holes that crushed the ships before their crews could even understand what was happening. Quantum disruptors tore apart the molecular structure of entire vessels, reducing them to clouds of free atoms in seconds. Antimatter torpedoes punched through Valth shields and armor as if they were made of paper. Dr. Nathan Price monitored the performance of his theoretical weapons from the science station aboard the flagship. Every system worked exactly as designed, demonstrating that humanity's decades of peaceful research and development had produced military technology far more advanced than anything the Valth possessed. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. Zekthar watched in horror as his entire fleet was systematically destroyed by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive and weak. His own flagship was crippled by a direct hit from a planet cracker missile that had been set to minimum yield. The weapon that could have destroyed an entire world instead simply vaporized half his ship and left the rest drifting helplessly in space. The surviving Vyelth ships attempted to retreat to their homeworld, but Admiral Stone had positioned her forces to prevent any escape. Captain Cole's stealth destroyers hunted down the fleeing vessels one by one, ensuring that no Valth commander would survive to warn their homeworld about humanity's true capabilities. Commander Baker led the final pursuit squadrons that tracked down every last Valth ship trying to flee the system. His orders were clear and absolute. No survivors, no witnesses, no one left alive to carry word of humanity's weapons to other potential enemies. War Prime Zekthar was captured alive when his crippled flagship was boarded by human marines. Admiral Stone had him brought to the USS Retribution so that Captain Morrison and the other Kepler station survivors could confront the alien commander who had ordered the massacre of their friends and families. Zekthar remained defiant even in defeat, insisting that the Valth were the rightful masters of this region of space and that humanity had no right to challenge their dominion. He showed no remorse for the genocide his forces had committed against dozens of peaceful civilizations over the centuries. Jake Morrison looked into the alien's multifaceted eyes and saw nothing that could be called mercy or compassion. You murdered children. You broadcast their executions to terrorize us. You thought we would be afraid, but all you did was show us what kind of monsters we were dealing with. Admiral Stone informed Zekthar that his homeworld would be the next target of humanity's advance. The Valth commander laughed and told her that his planet was defended by orbital fortresses and a fleet of over 200 warships. No enemy had ever successfully attacked the Valth homeworld in over 1,000 years of conquest and expansion. The Admiral's response was simple and terrifying. Your fleet is already destroyed. Your orbital defenses will not save you. In 24 hours, your homeworld will cease to exist and the Valth Dominion will be nothing but a footnote in galactic history. The Valth homeworld of Nethys hung in space like a dark jewel surrounded by the most powerful defenses the alien empire had ever constructed. Massive orbital battle stations formed protective rings around the planet, each one bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. 200 of the Vyelth's best warships patrolled the outer system, their crews confident that no enemy force could penetrate the defenses of their sacred homeworld. War Prime Zekthar had managed to send a warning message to Nethys before his fleet was destroyed, but his people refused to believe that the primitive humans possessed weapons capable of threatening their mighty civilization. The High Command of the Valth Dominion prepared for what they expected to be a glorious final battle that would crush the human invasion force and restore their empire's reputation for invincibility. Admiral Patricia Stone's fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, surrounding the Valth homeworld in an inescapable net of firepower. 400 human warships materialized simultaneously at precisely calculated positions that gave them overlapping fields of fire against every Valth defensive installation. The aliens had never seen such precise coordination or tactical planning. The USS Retribution took position at the center of the human formation, its massive hull dwarfing even the largest Vyelth vessels. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge alongside Dr. Lisa Carter, both survivors of the Kepler Station massacre bearing witness to the final chapter of their quest for justice. The terrible weapons that could crack planets waited in their launch tubes, ready to deliver humanity's ultimate judgment. Admiral Stone opened communication channels to the Valth homeworld and broadcast her message on all frequencies so that every alien on the planet could hear her words. Her voice was calm and professional, but carried the weight of absolute authority and unshakable determination. This is Admiral Patricia Stone of the Human Solar Defense Fleet. You stand accused of genocide against multiple peaceful civilizations and the unprovoked massacre of civilians at Kepler Station. Your crimes against sentient life cannot be forgiven or forgotten. I offer you one final opportunity to surrender and face trial for your war crimes. The response came from Supreme Commander Thrax, the highest military authority on Nethys and leader of the Velth war machine for over 50 years. His reply was filled with the same arrogance and contempt that had characterized every Velth interaction with other species throughout their history of conquest. Primitive humans, you dare to threaten the sacred homeworld of the Velth Dominion. We are the rightful masters of this galaxy, and you are nothing but insects that have forgotten their place. Withdraw immediately or face the full wrath of our superior civilization. Admiral Stone's response was immediate and final. Your answer is noted and rejected. All human vessels commence attack. Show them what happens when they murder our children. The battle for Nethys began with a coordinated strike that demonstrated the true extent of human technological advancement. The Velth had expected a conventional assault using traditional weapons and tactics, but humanity had developed an entirely new form of warfare based on theoretical physics and experimental science. Captain Miranda, Cole's stealth destroyers appeared inside the Velth defensive perimeter without warning, having used quantum tunneling technology to bypass the outer patrol lines entirely. Her ships launched antimatter torpedoes at point-blank range against the orbital battle stations, destroying 3 of the massive installations before the aliens even realized they were under attack. Commander Steve Baker led coordinated bomber squadrons that struck the remaining orbital defenses with gravity bombs and quantum disruptors. The Velth defensive systems, designed to repel conventional attacks, were completely overwhelmed by weapons that operated on principles their scientists had never encountered. The 200 Velth warships that had been patrolling the outer system moved to engage the human fleet in traditional battle formation. Supreme Commander Thrax still believed that superior numbers and firepower would carry the day, not understanding that humanity had developed weapons specifically designed to overcome technological disadvantages. Dr. Nathan Price monitored the deployment of his planet cracker missiles from the science station aboard the USS Retribution. Each weapon contained enough destructive power to shatter an entire world, but they could also be configured for more precise targeting. The first missiles struck the largest Velth warships with devastating effect, completely vaporizing vessels that had been considered invincible. The Velth fleet lasted exactly 47 minutes against the human assault. Admiral Stone had planned the engagement with mathematical precision, positioning her forces to create overlapping kill zones that prevented any enemy ship from escaping destruction. Advanced human weapons tore through Velth shields and armor as if they were made of tissue paper. Captain Jake Morrison watched the destruction of the alien fleet with grim satisfaction. Every Velth ship that died represented justice for the innocents who had been murdered at Kepler Station. The aliens who had taken such pleasure in broadcasting the executions of human children were now experiencing the terror and helplessness they had inflicted on so many peaceful civilizations. Supreme Commander Thrax made one final desperate attempt to negotiate as his orbital defenses crumbled around him. He offered territorial concessions, reparations, even the complete withdrawal of Velth forces from human space. Admiral Stone listened to his proposals in silence before delivering her final judgment. You had your chance for negotiation 3 weeks ago when you murdered our people. You chose genocide as your method of expansion, and now you will face the consequences of that choice. The Velth Dominion ends today. Dr. Lisa Carter stood beside the tactical display showing the positions of the planet cracker missiles as they prepared for their final launch sequence. She thought about her colleagues who had died defending Kepler Station, about the children whose bodies had been left floating in space as a message of terror. The aliens responsible for those crimes were about to face the ultimate punishment for their actions. The planet cracker missiles launched from the USS Retribution in perfect synchronization, their paths calculated to strike Nethys at precise points that would ensure complete planetary destruction. The weapons did not simply explode when they hit their targets. They triggered a cascade reaction that unraveled the molecular bonds holding the planet together. Nethys began to come apart at the atomic level, its billions of years of geological formation reduced to constituent particles in a matter of minutes. The Velth homeworld, center of an empire built on genocide and conquest, simply ceased to exist. There was no debris field, no asteroid belt, just empty space where moments before there had been an entire civilization. The few surviving Valth ships that had attempted to flee the system were systematically hunted down by human pursuit squadrons. Commander Greg Foster led the final cleanup operations, ensuring that not a single alien vessel escaped to carry word of their empire's destruction to other parts of the galaxy. Admiral Stone transmitted a final message that was broadcast to every known civilization in the galaxy. Her words were translated into hundreds of languages and sent to every corner of explored space. A warning that would echo through the stars for generations to come. This is Admiral Stone of the human fleet. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that humanity will no longer tolerate genocide or the deliberate targeting of innocent civilians. Any species that chooses the path of conquest and extermination will face the same fate as the Velth Dominion. We seek peace with all civilized beings, but we will not hesitate to defend the innocent against those who would harm them. Captain Morrison returned to Earth as a hero, but he carried with him the weight of 330 souls who had died at Kepler Station. He would spend the rest of his life ensuring that their sacrifice was remembered and that humanity never forgot the price of allowing evil to go unchallenged. Dr. Carter dedicated herself to studying and protecting the peaceful species that the Velth had threatened, working to ensure that no other civilization would suffer the fate of the extinct aliens. The galaxy had learned that humanity possessed both the capability and the will to eliminate entire species. When they crossed certain moral boundaries, peace reigned throughout human space for generations to come, backed by the absolute certainty that any aggressor would face total annihilation. The lesson of Nethys was clear and unambiguous. Humanity would go to any length to protect the innocent, even if it meant becoming the galaxy's most feared protector.